Here we go. Tuesday edition, Ed Schultz News and Commentary. Just got a call from Putin. He told me to make sure I get this out there. The FBI has come to the conclusion that there is no link between Donald Trump and Russia at any level. There's no link. They don't have anything. It's all bullshit, what you've heard on all the networks, okay? And, of course, this is a big disappointment to the Clinton camp. So this is one battle they're probably not going to fight because they got a lot of things fighting on WikiLeaks. There is a push for millennial voters, no doubt about it. Look, it's coming down to this. Florida, Ohio, North Carolina, Pennsylvania. Trump can't win the White House unless he wins those 4 states, okay? And the fact is that you can always look at the map and see where all the surrogates are going. The president's in 3 or 4 of those states today. He's the most popular Democrat. So they know where the breadbasket is in all of this. In the meantime, speaking in Pennsylvania today, the Trump campaign is going hard against Obamacare and also connecting it to the millennials, telling them that there's not going to be any future for them when it comes to the American dream if we continue with this healthcare system. Here's Trump.
Obamacare has to be replaced, and we will do it, and we will do it very, very quickly. It is a catastrophe. The president said, if you like your plan, you can keep your plan. If you like your doctor, you can keep your doctor, which may go down as one of the great political lies of the century. Even the skeptical Democrats believed him and approved the legislation. There were Democrats that were very much against it, but they believed him and they approved it. No one ever read, or certainly very few people, the 2,700-page bill. To this day, nobody understands it.
Well, the fact is 20 million more people do have health care. And it was interesting listening to Vice Presidential candidate Pence today talk about how those who have got a pre-existing condition and those who have got insurance are not going to lose insurance. Now, this is the first time I've heard the Republicans ever utter anything like that at all. And, of course, personally, that's where my concern is. On Fox and Friends this morning, Paul Ryan took another stab at trying to get millennials to turn the Republican way. Listen to this.
I stand where I've stood all fall and all summer. In fact, I already voted here in Janesville for our nominee last week in early voting. We need to support our entire Republican ticket. Here's the other thing I'd say. For those of us who lived through the 1990s, Steve, it's sort of a feeling of deja vu. And the point I keep trying to make to younger voters who did not live through the 1990s, this is what life with the Clintons looks like. It's always a scandal, one after another. Then there's an investigation. And what happens, Steve, is you never know what's coming next. They live beyond the rules, and they live to work the system to help themselves, to help Clinton Incorporated. And so they can win, and she could come in with a Democrat Congress, the worst of all possible things, if Republicans do not turn out and do not vote.
And Republicans are already on record, like Jason Chaffetz, saying that there's at least a couple of years' worth of investigative work to do on the Clintons if she is elected. So clearly our politics are being criminalized in a big, big way. There's a new story out in the New York Times about Donald Trump and his taxes. David K. Johnston, Pulitzer Prize winning journalist, to join us on that after this. Communication Workers of America, Alliance for American Manufacturing, BioGreen Clean, and the iSafe team bring you Ed Schultz News and Commentary.
Hey folks, you've heard me talk about BioGreen Clean. I'm going to show you right now on my airplane just how tough this is. I want you to keep in mind, chemical-free, 100% plant-derived, biodegradable. It is the safest cleaner that you can get, and it's the most effective. Go to our website, wegoted.com, or go to biogreenclean.com, www.biogreenclean, and order today.
It's time to continue our conversation about mechanical insulation. Mechanical insulation is for the piping systems in our nation's commercial and industrial facilities. Facility owners are burning up billions of dollars through the lack of mechanical insulation on these piping systems. Call the iSafe team. Insulation saves America valuable energy, and this team of energy conservation specialists is shovel-ready to save you money. Visit iSaveTeam.org to have a specialist give your plant an energy audit.
We perpetuate a culture of crime all the way from Wall Street right down to the main street in our hometowns. It's worse than it has been since FDR took control of the problem and said we can't count on industry taking care of the American labor. They probably have already engaged into some type of criminal cover-up, and the law prohibits the government from even doing anything about it.
Catch America's lawyer Mike Papantonio on YouTube at youtube.com/GoLeftTV.
Good to have you back with us. Ed Schultz in commentary. There is more information on the Donald when it comes to the financial world. I honestly believe this election is going to come down to who you really feel comfortable with. And there's problems with both candidates. To be fair-minded about it, there's all kinds of questions surrounding both of them. So who do you feel comfortable with? Do you feel comfortable with this? Is this a character issue? Question mark. New documents found that the GOP presidential nominee Donald Trump used a legally questionable tactic to avoid paying federal income taxes in the early 1990s. Now, you can research this. This is in the New York Times. And the story goes like this. Here's the teeth of it. Tax experts say that Trump was able to receive tax benefits for losing substantial amounts of money that was given to the real estate mogul from investors. In other words, you gave money to Trump. And the banks to help his casinos make it in Atlantic City. All right, so you give Trump money, you're a banker, you're an investor, now Trump's dealing with your money, he's doing this casino. He was able to get his backers to forgive, that would be you, an investor, forgive millions of dollars in debt he wasn't able to repay because the casino business screwed him. That's what he says. According to the IRS, he was supposed to report the canceled debt as taxable income. But due to this tactic he used, Trump sidestepped it, not having to report any of it. And so, of course, the Trump campaign is saying there's no news here. It should be pointed out that I believe it was in 2006, the Congress, and I don't know if this tactic by Trump and what he did to save himself almost $1 billion worth of taxable income, they changed the law. There's only one person to talk about this, David K. Johnston, Pulitzer Prize-winning journalist and author of the book, The Making of Donald Trump. David K., good to have you with us.
Well, thank you for having me on, Ed.
All right, so break this down for us. What happened to these investors? What did they get in return? Just some bad headlines?
Well, the only investors were banks. Trump did not have any individual investors. They were banks or people who bought bonds. And Trump used his position as a major employer in New Jersey to get the state of New Jersey through the Casino Control Commission, so they're all New Jersey politicians, to force his bankers to forgive almost $1 billion worth of debt that he owed. Now, that's normally, as you just said, income. If you borrow money from a bank and the bank doesn't require you to pay it all back, what you didn't pay back is income. It's as if somebody gave you money, right?
Yeah.
What Trump did next is the key issue here, which I explained in my Daily Beast column almost a month ago, the basic strategy that we now know more about what he did, however, because of the New York Times. He was able to convert what would have been income into losses against his casino business through something called the exception provisions of Section 108 in the tax code. And it's mind-numbing stuff. The opinion letter he got from lawyers about whether he could do this is 47 pages long. And it basically says, boy, this is not likely to pass scrutiny with the IRS. Well, Trump got lucky. It came before the U.S. Supreme Court in 2001, and Justice Clarence Thomas wrote the opinion and basically said, you shouldn't be able to do this. It violates the most basic principles around, but Congress didn't write the tax law the right way, so you can get away with this. And the way he wrote the opinion, Trump is not limited to a 19-year period, as the New York Times originally reported, to offset income with these losses. He can do it across his entire lifetime. He would have to live to be 96 years old at his 1995 income level to use up all of those losses, assuming he never got any more losses. Congress was so upset by this that just a couple of months later, the Republicans sponsored a bill that was put into law that put a stop to this for anybody after, I think it was October 11th of 2001. But they didn't write the law to say, hey, those of you who bought this lousy tax shelter, we're stopping it. You don't get any more benefits.
This is it's very rare in American politics that something so egregious happens where the Congress actually does something about it. And in this case, the folks that love tax cuts and breaks better than anybody, the Republicans did it.
Yes. And I think it's because, Ed, this one was so outrageous. What Trump did was he converted income into tax losses through this extremely hyper-technical and convoluted thinking that the court could easily have said this has no economic substance. And if a court rules there's no economic substance, then that's the end of it. You don't get to do it. And there was no economic substance. Obviously, if you had income, you didn't have losses, and you shouldn't be able through alchemy to take black ink on your bank statement and turn it into red ink.
Didn't he use some type of tactic where he gave out stock to those who lost money?
Well, the next step of this, of how Trump further benefited himself, was the tactic required reducing the value of his casinos to virtually nothing for tax purposes. He then created a publicly traded company, the only time he's ever done this. He put his casinos in that company. It lost money every year for the 13 years it was in business. He sold stock at $35 a share, and it borrowed a lot of money. Some of that money was used to pay off his personal debts, and he was paid $82 million as the head of the company at the same time that vendors who had done work for his casinos didn't get paid. I mean, this is an unbelievably awful and tawdry event, and I would describe it basically as legalized theft and marginally legalized theft. Had government regulators taken a different position about this and not sided with Trump, he wouldn't have gotten away with any of this.
Trump complains about all the audits he's going through. I would imagine in the wake of this is why they're auditing him. What do you think?
Well, there's no evidence he's being audited, and he will not release the audit letter. That would not tell us anything except he's under audit. It's a form letter you get from the IRS saying, we're auditing your tax return for this year. Mm-hmm. And so, frankly, I don't think there's any reason to think he's being audited. And the letter written by his lawyers about this is so artfully worded, Ed, he could be under audit for a gift tax issue where, let's say, he gave something to one of his grandchildren and didn't value it properly. But there's no evidence, just as there is no verifiable evidence that Trump is or ever was a billionaire, there is no evidence that he's under audit. And his odds of audit that year were in the neighborhood of 1 in 10 if he had $1 million plus income. But since he reported negative income, highly unlikely he was audited. The government basically doesn't audit people with negative incomes on the theory that there's nothing there to collect if you have a negative income.
Yeah. David K. Johnston, Pulitzer Prize-winning journalist, author of the book, The Making of Donald Trump. David K., thanks so much. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Ed.
You bet. Ed Schultz, News and Commentary, brought to you by Communication Workers of America, Alliance for American Manufacturing, BioGreen Clean, and the iSave team. We're back tomorrow.